Hey folks, welcome or welcome back. Today's video is going to be the nonfiction journey tag by the lovely Hannah over at Hannah's Books. I will link her original video down in the description. Also, two things before we get started. One, I apologize if you can still hear a little bit of the cold that I'm getting over in my voice. And second, I also apologize if there's a little bit of glare from the new light that I have in front of me, which is going to need some getting used to by me. Usually I like to have somewhat detailed notes written out already before going into a tag video as far as my answers go. Life at the moment has not allowed me to be that prepared for this video, so we are going to wing a little bit of some of this video as far as my answers go, so bear with me on that. But without further ado, let's get into this awesome tag. The first question of this tag is, what was your first experience with reading nonfiction? And the answer that I came up with this going back in my memories, I think first the Scholastic Dear Diaries series as well as their Royal Diaries series. I don't know exactly when Scholastic started to come out with these. I remember some of them definitely being published when I was in elementary school and middle school. They were a series of historical diaries written by young girls that were right around the age that I was when I was reading them. Apologies for my cat. She's having fun with a box, which was probably late elementary school, middle school, so maybe 11, 12 to like 14 or 15, that age range. But they were set in various time periods throughout American history from girls of different backgrounds. The Royal Diaries were similar in that they were fictionalized diaries written supposedly by various princesses throughout world history. Would I consider these to be pure nonfiction in the sense of, are they historically, true? No, these were fictionalized diaries. However, they were written in a manner, I guess, to simulate a young person's diary during different points in history. Actually, let me grab, I have a few left on my shelf, hold on. These are the ones that I have. I don't think I ever owned any of the Royal Diaries series, but these are my Dear America diaries. I have The Girl Who Chased Away Sorrow, The Diary of Sarah Nita, a Navajo Girl, set in New Mexico, 1864. This deals with the Trail of Tears. Voyage of the Great Titanic, The Diary of Margaret Ann Brady, RMS Titanic, 1912. We have Across the Wide and Lonesome Prairie, The Oregon Trail Diary of Hattie Campbell, 1847. And then the final one that I have, which I think might be the first one that I ever read, The Winter of Red Snow, The Revolutionary War Diary of Abigail Jane Stewart, Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, 1777. Yeah, I have just very, very fond memories of reading those, taking them out multiple times from the library. They were definitely something that cultivated my love and interest in history, getting to see it through the eyes of someone who was my age. So yeah, that was my introduction to nonfiction. It was sort of fictionalized historical diaries. Has the reading of nonfiction ever brought you to tears? And I would say, depending on the subject, there have been several times where I have definitely welled up. Most of them, from my memory, weren't necessarily specific books. They were more so documents and historical sources that I was assigned to read for my history classes in undergrad. One book that I can think of that is on my shelf, hold on. This is Redemption, The Last Battle of the Civil War by Nicholas Lemon. This is a tough book. It is, I believe, a necessary book on the subject of a white militia massacring a black town during Reconstruction period in the United States because they had amassed some level of political and economic power. This is a detailed look at the Colfax massacre that happened in Mississippi in 1878. Clearly, subject matter is horrific and intense, saddening, but more so I think I was crying out of anger when I read this. Next question. Are there any people that have played a significant role in your nonfiction journey? I didn't have an answer for this question per se. I don't think that there is really a person that comes to mind for this. Yeah, I think nonfiction is something that I have really come into reading more as I have gotten older. The next question I love, and that is, do you like documentaries? Do you have a favorite? Is there a subject you'd like to see discussed on film? That is, what should Ken Burns' next documentary be on? First off, I love documentaries. Whenever there was a substitute teacher that would come in for school and would just throw on a documentary, whether that be Bill Nye, whether that be Nat Geo, that was my perfect school day. Growing up, on occasion I would watch Saturday morning cartoons, but more often than not I would get up early on Saturday mornings and go and watch the History Channel for hours with the documentaries that they used to run on there before I got taken over by Ancient Aliens and Pawn Stars. I don't necessarily have a favorite documentary that immediately comes to mind, but but I think in general documentaries are something that I really love. A subject that you would like to see more discussed on film. I think this also bundles in with the what should Ken Burns' next documentary be about, and I think my answer, based on the book that I had previously mentioned, would be the Reconstruction period in the United States, the immediate period after the American Civil War from 1863 to 1877. I think that is a period in history that is very much undertaught in American schools, just because it doesn't necessarily paint us in a very good light as far as how the country was quote-unquote put back together after the Civil War, initial enfranchisement of Black political voices, and then the sort of almost immediate disenfranchisement and whole-scale violence that was unleashed in the form of the Ku Klux Klan, white militias terrorizing Black communities and individuals. It's also important in that modern American politics are deeply rooted in the events and the way things were structured after the American Civil War in the Reconstruction period than they were in the initial creation of the US government. Yeah, that is an overall time period that I would love to see Ken Burns address. I really love his American Civil War documentary series. I think another pet historical subject that I would love to see depicted in a documentary that I haven't necessarily come across yet. Female soldiers in the Soviet Union in both World War I and World War II that saw active combat, that were snipers, that became pilots in the Night Witch pilot division. I think that is a group that is really not talked about very much, at least in Western US history discussions of both of those conflicts. And I say that not in the sense of, yay, women go do war, more so in focusing on those experiences of women who did participate in various modern warfare, what their experience was, the good and the bad, getting to hear and understand their stories and be able to relate them to the wider context of those conflicts, of that time period, of the world that they were living in. I think that would be really cool. The next question is, have you read a biography or a memoir of a person that you identify with? I do have these books on my shelves, but for the sake of time, I'm going to just put them up on the screen over here. I would say a recent one that comes to mind for me is Journal of a Solitude by May Sarton. I read this during a winter reading vlog, if you're interested. May Sarton was a writer and a poet specifically during the 20th century. Journal of a Solitude is a published journal that she kept for a year during her sort of secluded writing life, and it documents her time during that period, her day-to-day routines, but also her sort of grappling with the writing life and the trials and tribulations that can come with it. And for me, that was something really cool to read and something that I could very keenly identify with. Writing is something that is very dear to me, and getting to see inside the life and the mind of a writer in part helped me to envision possible futures for myself. The other one that comes to mind that I read quite a few years ago now, I think, is The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. This is Amanda Palmer's memoir, and also she had previously done a TED Talk with the same title. I will link it probably down in the description if you're interested. It's a fantastic TED Talk. It is sort of, as the title suggests, the art of asking, the need and the beauty of being an artist and being able to make community, make connections, reach out, and trust other people to catch you if you go out on a limb. Amanda Palmer is an artist that is almost, I believe, she is entirely crowdfunded through Patreon and other means to do music, to do writing, to do art in general. There's a very symbiotic relationship between community and artist. The memoir itself talks about her journey as an artist, but also the journey that she underwent as far as being able to learn to be vulnerable and trust others and ask for help, essentially, when you are an artist in need of help, when you're a person in need of help. And lastly, I would be reticent if I did not mention Anne Frank's diary. This is a book that, while I haven't mentioned on the channel before, is one that is incredibly important to me, was incredibly formative, and I would almost say life-saving in some ways for me growing up reading it. I was nearly constantly rereading it. It was a huge source of comfort for me. Anne Frank is a huge inspiration as far as me starting to write my own journal, wanting to become a writer. Sorry, if you are not aware, I doubt most people are not aware, but just in case you are not aware, Anne Frank's diary is the published diary of a young adolescent, Anne Frank, in the 1940s, who was living in hiding during the Nazi occupation of the Netherlands, during which she kept a diary. Unfortunately, she and her family were discovered and subsequently murdered by the Nazis, but the diary has stood as a testament to her experience, testament to that time period and the horrors of it, but also it is, I think, most at its core deeply a journal that encapsulates hope. Reading it again and again as a young adolescent teenager was something that gave me hope during that period. Ooh. The next question, or I guess request, is read aloud a short passage you love from a work of nonfiction, and I'll hold up my laptop over here so I can read this quote. It's from the book Reading Lolita in Tehran by Azar Nafisi. Quote, "You don't read Gatsby," I said, "to learn whether adultery is good or bad, but to learn about how complicated issues such as adultery and fidelity and marriage are. A great novel heightens your senses and sensitivity to the complexities of life and of individuals, and prevents you from the self-righteousness that sees morality as fixed formulas about good and evil." I love that quote. I love that book. I think it's part of one of my answers for one of the future questions, so I will not go into detail now, but I'll just say, adore that book. The next question is, do you have any works of nonfiction that intimidate you? And the one that I immediately pulled off of my shelf, Hannah Arendt's The Origins of Totalitarianism. This is one that I am, I guess excited is the word. Excited, looking forward to. I know this is going to give me so much to chew on, but I am intimidated in the sense of it is a chunky boy. The print is very tiny. And Hannah Arendt is known as a political philosopher, I believe, in general, and I have heard from some sources that this is rather dense. Does that put me off it? No, but does it intimidate me a little bit? Yes. The next question is, what are your favorite works of nonfiction? The three previously mentioned books in this video are definitely amongst my favorites, but some other ones that come to mind are, one, Necessary Trouble Growing Up at Mid-Century by Drew Gilpin Faust. This was a book that I finished at the beginning of this year. It is her memoir of coming of age during mid-century, during the civil rights movement, her involvement with student activism, protest, the civil rights movement. Dr. Faust is also a historian, so she, of course, wrote a wonderfully contextual memoir of this time period, looking at the historical context that was happening around her, as well as the historical context of her family, and one, some of her lineage, but also the context that would have shaped the different generations of her family. Fantastic memoir. I listened to it on audiobook. I loved it so much that I purchased a physical copy and would really love to reread it and annotate it this year. Next, I have to give a shout out to Just Kids by Patti Smith. This is, if you're not aware, Patti Smith's memoir of her time as a young starving artist in 1960s, 1970s New York. This is a beautiful, insightful, powerful memoir of her time as an up-and-coming artist and those early hungry years of being a starving artist, making a name for yourself, finding a way through hell or high water to be able to make art and have art be your life's pursuit, your passion, and your job. A book that was assigned to me in an undergrad history class that I adored and would highly recommend is Reconstruction, America's Unfinished Revolution, 1863 to 1877 by Eric Foner. It is a tome in its sort of full form. However, in the past couple of years, I believe, there's been released an edited collection of it that is a little bit more manageable, a little bit slimmer, if you are intimidated by a large nonfiction history book. But as I was mentioning, the Reconstruction period in U.S. history is one that I believe is severely undertaught. This is a wonderfully written, detailed, but still approachable history nonfiction book about that period, and I would highly recommend it. My camera battery is flashing at me, so let's see if we can finish this up before it dies. Next is Without You, There Is No Us, My Time with the Sons of North Korea's Elite by Suki Kim. This is a memoir that I read last year and really blew me away. It is, Suki Kim is a journalist, I believe, and there was a time where she, I guess you could say, went undercover as a English teacher for a private school in North Korea and got to teach and interact with the sons of a lot of the North Korean political elite. And it is a very interesting memoir of her time doing that experience she had, but also the impact that it had on her and her students as well. Suki Kim herself is Korean and had family who experienced the Korean War and the division of the country, has, you could say, firsthand experience or knowledge of the ramifications and the trauma that elicited on a large population, and the sort of underlying tension that existed between her and her students of things that she was not allowed to talk about, that they were not allowed to talk about, but you could see there was a desire from both sides to potentially broach that line, broach that sort of barrier, the things that were not allowed to be said, all the things that she wanted to say, and the unique relationship that she was able to build and foster with her students. Really powerful memoir, highly recommend it. In the Garden of the Beasts by Erik Larson is a really wonderful nonfiction history book written in the style of, I believe, a diary or a memoir. But it's about the American ambassador and his family to Germany during the rise and establishment of the Nazis in Germany, so Berlin in the 1930s. It is incredibly well done, incredibly well researched. It's written in a way that does not feel like a typical, say, history nonfiction book. It feels like you're reading fiction, but it is itself an incredible insight into that time period, and I would say an unsettling look at a part of history that I guess I would say could have been prevented. The American ambassador at the time was a former history professor. The viewpoint and the mindset that he had and tried to impart on the American president, impart on diplomats that he interacted with, sort of fell on deaf ears. So I love that one. Reading Lolita in Tehran by Azar Nafisi, as previously mentioned. It is a memoir of her time as a English literature professor in Iran during the revolution, the Islamic Revolution, and her making the decision to continue to teach her female students when they were barred from the classroom and when she was eventually barred from teaching. And she forms this secret underground literature club where her former female students come and they read forbidden Western literature. Fantastic memoir. Read it in high school many, many moons ago and really want to reread it this year. Any book by David Blight. David Blight is probably one of, if not my favorite historian, but if you're looking for one specifically, Race and Reunion, The Civil War in American Memory is it's a book that I want to shove into every American history classroom. David Blight is an incredible writer and academic. He has this wonderful depth and musicality to his writing. There are parts where it feels almost poetic. This book specifically looks at historical memory, which is a subject that I am very passionate and drawn to. It is concerning how and why we remember things the way that we do, how we memorialize things, historical events, and one, what does that say about us at the time, but also what effect does that have on our future? In this book, David Blight is looking at the memory traditions surrounding the American Civil War, how America chose largely to remember the Civil War, Southern perspective of the lost cause of this sort of pseudo-historical fantasy that has been created around the American South and the former Confederacy. Yeah, what that has led to, the ripple effects that has had on us and our view of the historical events, but also how that has justified certain treatment of people in our present, how the constructed past is often used to justify the brutality and oppression of people in the present. It is also a nonfiction book that has brought me to tears. Anything by David Blight, but that one specifically. Last book that I'm going to recommend before my battery runs out is Wild Swans, Three Daughters of China by Jun Chang. This is an incredible memoir, 3 generations of Jun Chang and her family in 20th century China, following the life of her grandmother, her mother, and herself throughout 20th century China. You start off with her grandmother in warlord China. Her mother was a high-ranking communist official during the revolution. Her mother and father were both persecuted later by the communist government, had suspicion turned on them. The author herself was raised in communist China and eventually left to study in the West, and it is just a fascinating, incredibly detailed memoir of this family, and it almost feels like a movie when you're reading it. I guess wild things that happen, so many plot twists. Yeah, it's a very intense read. It is a really fascinating read, and if you enjoy generational stories, generational memoirs, history, I would recommend that one to you. Alright, and the final part of this video is to tag fellow booktubers. If you are a fellow booktuber and you're watching this and you would like to do this tag, please please feel free to do so. I tag you. If you are someone that does not have a booktube channel but would like to answer some of these questions, please do so in the comments below. I would love to read them. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps my channel grow. It lets me know that you enjoyed the topic of the video, but I hope you're having a great time wherever you are, whenever you watch this, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Bye. Hannah Ardent's The Origins of Excuse me. Today's video is going to be, why are you focusing up there? Thank you. Yeah, you can see it. Oh man. Okay. Something like that. That will probably help, but then I can't see shit. It's okay. It's the first video. It's the first video. Oh, I need to pose. God, it's a weird thing to say. I'm not used to this thing either. Oh God. No. Focus on my face. Come on. I hope editing me has some good funny takes in there. Good luck editing me.